In the empty lobby, Marcus heard a scream. He dropped his mop and ran, finding a woman in an expensive blazer collapsed on the floor, clutching her chest. Her lips were turning blue as she whispered, "Tell my daughter I love her." The lobby of Heritage Tower was unnervingly quiet at that hour of the night, the kind of silence that made every sound echo. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed faintly, one of them flickering in a stubborn, uneven rhythm. Marcus Chun pushed his mop across the marble floor, watching the reflection of his tired face blur and reappear in each stroke. It was nearly midnight, the dead space between the workday and the morning rush, when the skyscraper seemed abandoned except for the cleaning staff. He had learned to live with silence since Sarah died. 2 years had passed, yet her absence still pressed on him in moments like this, when the world was still and no distraction could keep memories away. His 6-year-old daughter, Emma, was the only reason he kept moving, the only reason he hadn't given in to the hollow nights. Every day, he reminded himself of the promise he made. Emma would grow up knowing that goodness still existed in the world, even when life tried to prove otherwise. The mop handle slipped slightly in his damp hands. He adjusted his grip, focusing on the simple rhythm of work. Clean, rinse, repeat. He could almost measure time by it. The janitor's job was thankless, but it kept a roof over their heads and cereal in the cupboard, even if the rent stretched him thinner than he admitted. Then, at 11:47 p.m., the silence broke. A scream, sharp and sudden, echoed through the vast lobby. It wasn't the shriek of surprise or annoyance Marcus sometimes overheard from tenants. This was different, raw, panicked, and drenched in pain. His mop clattered to the floor, the sound reverberating against the marble pillars. For an instant, instinct clashed with caution. Most people would stay out of it. That was the rule of survival in places like this. Keep your head down, keep working, and let security handle whatever trouble rose. But Marcus had never been most people. Not before Sarah, and not now. Not when every choice felt like a test of what kind of man Emma would grow up believing her father was. Without another thought, he ran. His sneakers squeaked loudly as he sprinted across the lobby, each footfall a desperate echo. His breath quickened, heart pounding with a dread he didn't fully name yet. He turned the corner toward the executive elevator bank and froze. A woman in a tailored blazer was crumpled on the polished floor, her knees bent awkwardly, her hand clutching her chest. Pain twisted her features, stealing the elegance from her sharp face. Her designer handbag lay spilled beside her, its contents scattered, lipstick rolling across the tiles, a wallet half open, keys glinting under the harsh light. The scene was jarring, like a life suddenly fractured and laid bare. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Marcus dropped to his knees beside her. The janitor's uniform clung damply to his skin from earlier work, and his calloused hands hovered for a split second before steadying against the cool floor. He'd seen this before. He knew the look, the gasping struggle for air, the lips darkening to blue. Sarah. The memory slammed into him. His wife, gone before he made it to the hospital. The phone call he couldn't answer fast enough. The sight of her body lying still while monitors beeped uselessly. Too late. Always too late. Not this time. His hands shook as he pulled his phone from his pocket, dialing 911 so fast the numbers blurred. His voice cracked but stayed firm enough to get the words out. "Heart attack. Heritage Tower. Send an ambulance now." He dropped the phone on speaker and leaned close, loosening the woman's collar with trembling fingers. "Stay with me. Help is coming. Just breathe, okay? In and out. Look at me." Her eyes fluttered open, glazed but sharp enough to find his. Panic and defiance swam in them, a will not to go quietly. She gasped, "Can't breathe." "You can. Focus on my voice." His own terror clawed at his throat, but he forced steadiness into every word. "You're not alone. I'm right here." The woman's grip shot out, surprising in its strength, and latched onto his wrist. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "My daughter. Sophie. Westbrook Academy. If I don't," her voice broke on a sob. "Tell her I love her. Please. Tell her." Marcus pressed her hand against his. "You're going to tell her yourself," he said firmly, though his chest ached with the weight of her words. "What's your name?" "Catherine," she managed. "Catherine, I'm Marcus. I've got a daughter, too, Emma. She's 6, loves unicorns, and asks me every single day why the sky is blue." He spoke quickly, desperate to keep her tethered to the world. You know what I tell her? I say, because the world is full of beautiful things if you just look up. Catherine's breathing hitched, uneven, but her gaze stayed locked on his. For 8 long minutes. 8 minutes that stretched into eternity. He kept talking, coaxing her through the waves of pain, whispering words he wished someone had said to Sarah when he wasn't there. Then, the distant wail of sirens cut through the night. Relief flooded his chest. The paramedics burst through the lobby doors, their efficiency a blur of movement and clipped instructions. Marcus pulled back only when they surrounded her, hooking machines, lifting her onto the stretcher. As they wheeled her away, Catherine's fingers brushed his arm one last time. Her lips moved silently. "Thank you." And then she was gone, swallowed into flashing red lights. Marcus remained kneeling on the marble floor, the abandoned contents of her life scattered around him. He gathered them carefully, wallet, lipstick, keys, placing them back into her handbag with reverence. One business card caught his eye: Catherine Hartwell, Chief Executive Officer, Hartwell Industries. The name rang familiar, a headline from newspapers left behind in break rooms. The company owned half the city, including this very tower. Marcus placed the bag with building security, picked up his mop, and returned to his shift. The floor still needed cleaning. His shift still ended at 6 a.m. Life, in all its indifference, moved on. The sound of Catherine's labored breathing stayed with Marcus long after the paramedics had disappeared through the lobby doors. His heart was still hammering, his palms clammy from the effort of forcing calm into his words. He hadn't expected her to cling to him the way she had. For those 8 minutes, it was as if the two of them were the only people in the world, strangers bound together by desperation and the fragile thread of his voice. When she first gripped his wrist, he almost flinched. Her skin was icy, her nails pressing faintly into his arm, as though she was anchoring herself to him, refusing to let the darkness take her. Her words tumbled out in a hoarse whisper, about her daughter, Sophie, about love left unsaid. The fear in her voice pierced him deeper than the scream had. It wasn't the fear of pain or even of death. It was the fear of leaving behind unfinished love, of not being there for the child who still needed her. Marcus knew that fear. It had haunted him since Sarah's death. Every morning, he wondered whether Emma was getting enough of him. Enough laughter, enough guidance, enough reassurance to know she was safe in a world that had taken her mother too soon. "No," he told Catherine in that moment, his tone firm, almost commanding. "You'll tell her yourself. I promise." He could hear how desperate he sounded, but he didn't care. He needed her to believe him, needed her to cling to that possibility. So he talked, spilling details of Emma's life that he usually saved for bedtime stories. He told her about Emma's obsession with unicorns, about how she had drawn one on every page of her kindergarten notebook. He described her stubborn curiosity, how she always asked why the sky was blue, why the moon followed them home, why people cried when they were happy. "You know what I tell her?" Marcus said, leaning close so Catherine's unfocused gaze stayed locked on his. "I tell her the sky is blue because the world is full of beautiful things if you just look up. And you," he squeezed her hand gently, "you've got to look up right now, Catherine. Look at me. Stay with me." Her lips trembled, but her eyes stayed open. He saw the panic there, but also a flicker of will. That spark gave him strength. He forced his voice steady, even though his own chest ached with the weight of remembering Sarah. He thought of the night he got the call, how he had driven through red lights to the hospital only to arrive too late. He thought of holding Sarah's hand when it was already cold, of Emma sleeping at home, unaware her mother was gone. Not this time. He couldn't let history repeat itself. Not for Catherine, not for Sophie. Minutes stretched, heavy and unforgiving. Each one felt like it could break her. But Marcus refused to let silence win. He kept speaking, his voice low but insistent. He described the sound of Emma's laughter, the way it bubbled like water over stones. He told Catherine how his daughter insisted on keeping a night light because she thought stars should be inside the house too. Every small, ordinary detail became a lifeline, words layered into a rope Catherine could hold on to. When the sirens finally wailed outside, Marcus almost sagged in relief. The paramedics stormed through the doors with their equipment, voices crisp and professional. They barely looked at him as they assessed Catherine, fitting an oxygen mask over her face, attaching leads and monitors with efficient hands. Marcus stepped back, his knees aching from the marble floor, but he couldn't tear his eyes away. He'd seen life slip away once. He needed to see her fight through this. Catherine's fingers brushed his arm as they lifted her onto the stretcher. The faintest whisper escaped her lips. "Thank you." He swallowed hard, unable to reply before she was wheeled away, swallowed by flashing lights and urgent movement. Then came the stillness. The lobby was silent again, save for the faint buzz of the flickering light above. Catherine's spilled belongings remained scattered across the floor: wallet, keys, cards, lipstick. Ordinary things, suddenly fragile reminders of how quickly life could fracture. Marcus knelt and picked them up carefully, almost reverently, as if by handling them gently, he could somehow protect the life they belonged to. One card, polished and heavy with embossed letters, made him pause. Catherine Hartwell, Chief Executive Officer, Hartwell Industries. The name meant something. He remembered seeing it in newspapers abandoned in the break room, headlines about real estate deals and charity galas. Hartwell Industries owned this very tower. She wasn't just a tenant, she was the top. The thought struck him, but it didn't change what had just happened. In those 8 minutes, she hadn't been a CEO. She had been a mother, terrified of leaving her daughter behind. And he had been the man who refused to let her face it alone. He placed the handbag with security and returned to his mop, though his hands still trembled. Work waited. The shift didn't end until morning. The world didn't pause, not even after moments that felt like they should have changed everything. But Marcus knew something had shifted. Maybe not in the tower, not in the city, but inside him. He hadn't been too late this time. And that mattered. The next morning, Heritage Tower stood gleaming in the early sun as if nothing had happened the night before. The marble floors Marcus had scrubbed until dawn reflected the golden light pouring through the tall windows. By the time the city was waking up, Marcus was already walking home, shoulders aching, hands raw from detergent, mind still replaying the images of Catherine gasping for air. He hated the feeling that followed, uncertainty mixed with dread. He hadn't even known if she survived the ride to the hospital. He told himself she had. She was strong enough to hold on until the paramedics came. But what if? The thought gnawed at him with every step. By the time he reached his neighborhood, fatigue pressed heavy on his eyelids. But he forced himself upright. Emma would be waiting. She was always the reason he straightened his back and swallowed the ache. Mrs. Rodriguez, their elderly neighbor, opened the door with a smile. "She's been up since 6, drawing," she said softly. "Wouldn't let me make her eat until she showed you." Before Marcus could answer, Emma barreled toward him, holding up a piece of paper with both hands. A purple dragon stretched across the page, wings crooked but proud, flames curling out of its mouth in a messy crayon blaze. Her gap-toothed grin lit up her entire face. "Daddy, look what I made," she announced, bouncing on her toes. Marcus scooped her up, pressing his face against her hair, which smelled faintly of strawberry shampoo. He held her longer than usual, as though grounding himself in her warmth. "It's perfect, sweetheart. Just like you." Her laughter filled the small apartment as she wriggled out of his arms, eager to pin her drawing on the fridge. He watched her, marveling at how easily children could carry joy without knowing the shadows adults lived under. Breakfast was cereal, again. Payday wasn't until Friday, and the box was almost empty. He poured the last of the milk into her bowl, leaving none for himself. She ate cheerfully, chattering about her school play and how she wanted to be a doctor, just like the ones who try to help mommy. Marcus froze, the spoon halfway to his mouth. He lowered it quietly, letting her words pass without interruption. Sarah's name always cracked something inside him, but he never let Emma see it. He only nodded, smiling faintly, as if her dream didn't remind him of that night 2 years ago, of the doctors who had come too late. After breakfast, he ironed Emma's secondhand uniform, pressing each crease with a care that masked how worn the fabric was. He polished her scuffed shoes until they looked almost new, then knelt to tie the laces. She stood still, humming softly, her little hand resting on his shoulder as if she somehow knew how tired he was. The 6 blocks to Riverside Elementary were filled with Emma's endless stories, about how her friend Mia forgot her lines during rehearsal, about how the teacher promised they'd use real costumes this time. Marcus nodded along, smiling when she looked up at him, though his thoughts kept drifting back to Catherine's pale face, her whispered plea about Sophie. At the school gate, Emma wrapped her arms around his waist. "Don't be sad today, Daddy," she said suddenly, as if she could see the heaviness behind his eyes. He kissed the top of her head. "I'll try, baby. Now go show them how smart you are." She ran off, her backpack bouncing, her voice rising above the noise of other children. For a moment, Marcus just stood there, letting the morning sun touch his face, wishing Sarah could see their daughter growing into herself. Later, at the laundromat, the exhaustion finally hit him. He sat slumped on a plastic chair, folding their clothes with mechanical precision. His wallet held only $7, just enough for detergent and dryer time. As the machines hummed, he tried not to think about how fragile his balance was, how a single missed shift or unexpected bill could topple everything. Then his phone rang. The screen lit with an unfamiliar number. He hesitated before answering, his stomach already tight. "Hello, is this Marcus Chen?" a crisp female voice asked. "Yes," he replied cautiously. "This is Jennifer Wells from Hartwell Industries. We need to speak with you regarding an incident that occurred last night at Heritage Tower. Can you come to our headquarters tomorrow at 2 p.m.? Marcus's hand tightened around the phone. His heart sank as though pulled into a pit. He had been called into offices before, and it never ended well. The words incident and human resources felt like nails sealing his fate. "Yes," he said slowly. "I can be there." "Excellent. Ask for me at reception. Jennifer Wells, Human Resources." The line went dead, leaving Marcus staring at the buzzing machines. He already knew what this meant. He had broken protocol, abandoned his post, left floors uncleaned. It didn't matter that he had saved a life. Rules were rules, and rules rarely bent for men like him. That night, Emma noticed his silence. She curled up beside him on their worn-out couch, eyes wide with worry. "Daddy, are you sad?" He shook his head and pulled her close. "No, baby. Just tired." She thought for a moment, then whispered, "When I'm tired, Mommy used to sing to me. Do you remember the song?" Marcus's throat closed, but he nodded. "I remember." His voice, rough and off-key, filled the room with the old melody. "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." Emma's breathing slowed against his chest until she fell asleep. Marcus stayed awake, staring at the water stain on the ceiling. He calculated how long the rent would last if he lost the job. 3 weeks, maybe 4 if he skipped meals. He'd done it before. He could do it again. But this time, the thought of Catherine's desperate eyes, of Sophie's name whispered into his hand, wouldn't leave him. The night before his meeting with Hartwell Industries stretched long and sleepless. Marcus lay on the couch with Emma curled beside him, her small frame pressed trustingly into his side. The television played low reruns in the background, the kind of shows he didn't bother to follow, but the noise helped keep his mind from spinning too fast. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Catherine on the floor of the lobby, clutching her chest. Every time he drifted close to sleep, he heard her hoarse whisper, "Tell Sophie I love her." But the memory was tangled now with something darker. The voice of Jennifer Wells, crisp and professional, summoning him to the headquarters. He knew how these stories ended. 2 jobs had slipped through his fingers in the past year, both times because Emma had needed him more than his employers did. Once when she had a fever that sent her to the emergency room, another when her school called and he left mid-shift to pick her up. Nobody cared that he was raising her alone. No one wanted excuses. Hartwell Industries would be no different. It didn't matter that he had saved a life. To them, he had left a mop and bucket abandoned on the marble floor, had failed to finish his duties, had crossed some invisible line. Companies didn't see the human heart behind actions. They saw liability, rule-breaking, and profit margins. Beside him, Emma stirred, half asleep, and whispered, "Don't be sad, Daddy. Tomorrow will be okay." Her voice was thick with drowsiness, but her trust stabbed him deeper than anything. How could he protect her from the truth that the fragile life they had built could crumble overnight, that a single meeting could decide whether they'd still have a roof in 3 weeks? "Go back to sleep, sweetheart," he whispered, stroking her hair. "Daddy's right here." But his chest ached. He had always been here, always tried to be everything for her, yet the world seemed determined to remind him how little one man could control. The morning came heavy with gray clouds. Marcus dressed carefully, pulling his only dress shirt from the back of the closet. The collar was frayed, the cuffs thinning, but it was all he had. He smoothed it over his chest, remembering the last time he had worn it, Sarah's funeral. The thought clung to him like a shadow. Emma padded into the room, rubbing her eyes, still in her pajamas. She climbed onto the couch and watched him button the shirt. "Are you going somewhere important?" she asked. "Just a meeting, baby." He tried to keep his tone casual, but she frowned, sensing more. Children always did. She swung her legs and said quietly, "You look like when you're nervous." He smiled faintly. "Maybe a little. But don't worry. Mrs. Rodriguez will pick you up after school, okay? Daddy might be late." Emma nodded, though her eyes lingered on him with quiet concern. By noon, Marcus was on the bus, staring out the window as the city blurred past. He counted the change in his pocket twice, making sure he had enough for the ride home. The bus rumbled through neighborhoods he could never afford, and as downtown rose ahead like glass and steel giants, he felt smaller with every block. Hartwell Industries' headquarters loomed like a monument to power. Glass panels stretched into the clouds, gleaming with wealth that had no place in Marcus's world. He paused at the revolving doors, adjusting his collar, painfully aware of his scuffed shoes and the faint detergent smell clinging to his uniform trousers. Men in pressed suits and women in sleek dresses brushed past him, their perfume and polished shoes announcing lives so far removed from his that it felt like another planet. Inside, the lobby was cathedral-like, soaring ceilings, marble floors, and modern art installations that looked like they belonged in a museum. Marcus forced himself forward, each step heavy with dread. He approached the reception desk, clearing his throat. "I'm here to see Jennifer Wells," he said. Marcus Chun. The receptionist, polished and professional, gave him a once-over before offering a polite smile. "Of course, Mr. Chun. They're expecting you. 52nd floor." 52nd. His stomach clenched. He hadn't been that high up in a building since Sarah's hospital room, when he had looked down at the city lights wondering how life could keep going while his world ended. The elevator ride felt endless. His reflection stared back at him from the mirrored walls, tired eyes, rough hands, shirt that didn't fit right. He shifted uncomfortably, gripping the rail as numbers lit up one by one. Each ding brought him closer to judgment. When the doors finally opened, a woman stood waiting. Jennifer Wells. She was in her 50s, neatly dressed, with sharp posture softened by kind eyes. She extended her hand. "Mr. Chun, thank you for coming. Please, follow me." Marcus shook her hand, trying not to reveal how clammy his own was. "Thank you." The hallway she led him down was lined with photographs of buildings, skyscrapers, shopping centers, entire neighborhoods shaped by Hartwell Industries. Behind the glass walls of conference rooms, people in expensive suits leaned over charts and laptops, voices low but purposeful. It was another world, one he didn't belong to. He kept his gaze on the carpet, heart thudding. Finally, Jennifer opened a door to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking downtown. The view was dizzying, endless. And standing by the window, pale but alive, was Catherine Hartwell. She turned at the sound of the door, and when her eyes found Marcus, her face broke into a smile that seemed to light the entire room. "Marcus," she said, crossing toward him. "You saved my life." The words hit him like a wave. For the first time since the phone call, he exhaled. She was alive, but the relief was tangled with dread. Because alive or not, this meeting would decide everything. The office was a world Marcus had never stepped into before. Light poured through the vast windows, painting the walls in pale gold. A sleek desk stood near the far side of the room, framed by bookshelves lined with awards, photographs of ribbon-cutting ceremonies, and charity galas where Catherine Hartwell's name must have been spoken with reverence. But Marcus saw none of that at first. He only saw Catherine, alive, standing, breathing. She was paler than the woman he'd found in the lobby, her posture still a touch fragile, but her smile was real, warm in a way that caught him off guard. "You saved my life," she said again, and this time her voice wasn't strained with pain. It was steady, rich with conviction. Marcus's throat tightened. He opened his mouth, but the words tangled. I just did what anyone would do." Catherine's expression shifted, her sharp brows drawing together. "No, most people wouldn't. Most people would have hesitated. They would have been afraid of liability, afraid of getting involved. But you didn't." She stepped closer, her tone firm but not unkind. "You stayed. You kept me awake. The doctors told me if I had lost consciousness before the paramedics arrived, I wouldn't have made it." The weight of her words pressed into him. For a moment, the polished floor seemed to tilt beneath his feet. He thought of Sarah again, of that awful night when no one had been there soon enough. He had lived with the guilt of being too late. And now, Catherine was telling him that he had done the opposite. He had been exactly where he needed to be, exactly when it mattered most. I got to see my daughter yesterday, Catherine continued, her voice softening. I got to hold her and tell her I love her. Because of you. Marcus looked down, the tips of his ears burning. His calloused hands twisted together, unsure what to do with the praise. I'm glad, he managed quietly. That's all that matters. Jennifer Wells motioned toward a chair near the desk. Please sit. Marcus obeyed, lowering himself cautiously as though the fine leather might reject him. He perched on the edge, spine rigid, eyes flickering between Catherine and the view outside. The city sprawled below them, indifferent and glittering. He thought of Emma walking into school that morning, wearing shoes he had polished until the cracks nearly disappeared. She would never imagine her father sitting here, 52 floors up, in the office of a woman whose company owned half the city. Catherine took her seat across from him, studying him with the same sharpness she might reserve for negotiations, though her gaze softened each time it lingered on his face. Marcus, I asked Jennifer to bring you here because I needed to see you myself. I needed to thank you properly. He nodded quickly, unsure of what else to do. You don't have to thank me. You don't owe me anything. Her lips curved faintly, but she shook her head. You may believe that, but I don't. Gratitude is not something I brush aside. The silence stretched, filled with the quiet hum of the city far below. Marcus's nerves prickled. This was the part he had been dreading. He cleared his throat. If this is about me leaving my post last night, he swallowed hard. I understand. If I'm being let go. Catherine raised a hand, her eyes narrowing slightly. Let go. His words tumbled out before he could stop them. I left my floor unfinished. I wasn't supposed to be near the executive elevators. Security protocol says. Her voice cut him off, firm but incredulous. Marcus, you saved my life. And you think we called you here to fire you? His face burned with shame, but it wasn't paranoia, it was experience. It wouldn't be the first time, he admitted quietly. I've lost jobs before. They don't care why. Only that the rules were broken. He thought of Emma asleep against his chest the night before, of the ceiling stain he stared at while calculating how long they could survive if he was unemployed again. Catherine leaned forward, resting her hands on the desk. Her eyes glistened, not with pity, but with something fiercer, almost protective. That may be true of other companies, Marcus, but it's not going to be true here. Not with me. The certainty in her tone unsettled him almost as much as it soothed him. He glanced at Jennifer, who gave a small, encouraging nod, as if to assure him that this wasn't some cruel trick. Catherine continued, her voice steadier now. After the hospital released me this morning, I asked my team to look into you. I hope you don't mind. I learned you're a single father, that you take 3 buses to get here each night, that you work nights so you can be there for your daughter during the day, and that after your wife passed, you paid for a CPR class with money meant for your daughter's birthday. Marcus blinked. He hadn't expected his life to be laid bare on her desk. You looked into me? I had to, she said simply, because I needed to know who the man was who kept me alive long enough to see my child again. And what I learned, she paused, her eyes meeting his without wavering. What I learned is that you are exactly the kind of person this world needs more of. His chest tightened. For so long, he had been invisible, another face behind a mop, another man the world didn't stop to notice. And here she was, Catherine Hartwell, CEO, a woman who could command entire skyscrapers with her signature, telling him he mattered. He didn't know how to respond. His voice came out barely above a whisper. I just did what I had to. Catherine smiled gently, though her eyes were shining. Exactly. The weight of fear hadn't left him entirely. It lingered like a shadow, whispering that this couldn't last, that some punishment was still coming. But sitting there, across from the woman whose life he had saved, Marcus felt the faintest shift inside himself. For once, maybe the world wasn't only going to take. Maybe, just maybe, it might give. For a moment, the office was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning and the distant thrum of the city below. Marcus sat perched on the edge of the leather chair, still braced for the verdict he had expected since yesterday. The words that would strip away the little stability he had left. Catherine folded her hands on the desk, her gaze steady. Marcus, she said slowly, you're fired. The word struck like a physical blow. His chest hollowed, the breath knocked from him. Fired. Just like that. He had rehearsed hearing it, had prepared himself for the crushing weight of walking home and telling Emma. But preparation never softened the impact. His stomach clenched, and Sarah's face flickered through his mind, followed by Emma's gap-toothed smile. How would he explain to her that they might have to leave their apartment, that cereal for dinner would become the rule instead of the fallback? His hands curled into fists on his knees. He began, voice rough. I understand. Catherine tilted her head, watching his face carefully. Then she leaned forward, her voice firm, almost amused at his assumption. From your janitorial position. Marcus blinked, the words not making sense at first. It was as though his ears had misheard. Because, she continued, her expression softening into something that was both kind and deliberate. I'm offering you a new one. Marcus stared. The words hung in the air like a foreign language. A new one? Director of Community Outreach for Hartwell Industries, Catherine said, the title rolling smoothly from her tongue. 6-figure salary. Full benefits. A college fund for Emma. And standard business hours so you can actually be with her during the day. The office spun around him. He gripped the chair to steady himself. I don't understand, he whispered. I'm not qualified. I clean floors. Catherine's gaze sharpened. Marcus, you saved a life without hesitation. You showed compassion when it mattered most. That can't be taught. Business strategy, marketing, those can be learned. But the heart you showed, her voice thickened slightly. The world doesn't have enough of that. My company doesn't have enough of that. Jennifer Wells, still standing to the side, nodded quietly, as if to affirm every word. Marcus shook his head, trying to process. Why me? There are thousands of people more qualified. Because I don't want qualified, Catherine interrupted, her voice cutting through his disbelief. I want someone who remembers what this company was supposed to be about. I built Hartwell Industries from nothing, Marcus. And somewhere along the way, I forgot. I forgot about the people at the bottom, the ones who hold up the towers we live in. You reminded me. Her eyes glistened, though her posture remained unwavering. Now I want you to help me remember. I want to start programs for single parents, fund community initiatives, create opportunities for people who just need someone to believe in them. People like you. Marcus felt heat sting his eyes. He looked down at his hands, rough and scarred, and for a fleeting second he thought of Sarah, of how proud she might have been, how she had always told him he was stronger than he believed. His voice came out broken. Why? Catherine's answer was simple, steady. Because kindness should never go unrewarded. Because yesterday my daughter asked me who saved me, and I want to tell her about the janitor who became a hero. Because this world takes from good people constantly, and for once, I want to give something back. She extended her hand across the desk. Her fingers were steady now, not trembling as they had been on the marble floor. What do you say, Marcus? His chest swelled with a storm of emotion, fear, disbelief, relief so sharp it almost hurt. He thought of Emma again, of the life she might have now. Dance lessons, new shoes, a future where he didn't have to measure rent against groceries. But more than that, he thought of the lesson he could give her, the proof that doing the right thing, even when it cost you everything, could sometimes lead to miracles. His hand shook as he reached across the desk and took Catherine's. I say yes. His voice cracked. Thank you. Thank you. Catherine's smile widened, a rare mixture of triumph and tenderness. Good, she said. Then let's get to work. Marcus exhaled for the first time in what felt like years. For once, the world wasn't only taking. It was giving something back. 3 months later, Marcus stood in an office he never could have imagined belonging to him. It wasn't as vast as Catherine's, but it had a window that stretched across one wall, letting in the morning sun. The light spilled over a desk covered in neatly stacked proposals and reports, folders marked with titles like Single Parent Assistance Program and Community Scholarship Initiative. He still caught himself staring at the words sometimes, hardly believing they were his responsibility. The space bore no resemblance to the janitor's closet where he had kept his mop and supplies. There was no lingering smell of bleach, no cracked tile underfoot. Instead, there was a framed drawing of a purple dragon on the wall, Emma's proud creation, transferred from their refrigerator to this new place of honor. Beside it hung a photograph of Sarah, smiling in the sunshine on a long-ago afternoon. Marcus had positioned it where his eyes would always fall between meetings, a quiet anchor to remind him where he had come from. He had not forgotten. He promised himself he never would. Every day, Marcus worked harder than he ever had with a mop in his hands. But now the labor was different. Instead of scrubbing floors, he was reviewing budgets, meeting with community leaders, listening to the stories of single mothers juggling two jobs, fathers trying to raise children alone, families scraping by on less than survival. For each face, each story, Marcus felt a sharp recognition. He had been there. He had been invisible once, just another tired man others looked past. Now, he had the chance to make sure fewer people were left unseen. He sometimes caught himself thinking about his first day here, about how nervous he had been. The suit Catherine had insisted the company provide him hung awkwardly on his shoulders. He had stumbled over acronyms, misunderstood terms in meetings, flushed with embarrassment when board members raised eyebrows. But Catherine had been there, steady, assuring him he belonged. "You'll learn," she had told him. "No one can teach what you already have." And she had been right. Slowly, Marcus had grown into the role. His natural compassion turned into a compass that guided every decision. Where others saw numbers and charts, Marcus saw families, children, and choices that mattered. This morning, he stood by the window, reviewing a scholarship proposal for children who had lost parents. The idea alone made his chest ache. He thought of Emma's dream to become a doctor, and of how Sarah's absence had left a hollow space that no money could fill. But opportunities like these could ease some of that ache for other families, could light a path where there had been none. Behind him, Emma's dragon watched with wide crayon eyes, and Sarah's smile reminded him that miracles often came disguised as hard nights. His phone buzzed on the desk, pulling him from the papers. He glanced at the screen and saw a text from Catherine. "Sophie's school play tonight. Emma's invited. Partners' kids stick together." Marcus read it twice, a slow smile spreading across his face. In the whirlwind of change, one thing had become clear. Catherine wasn't just his employer. She had become something closer to family. Not a replacement for what he had lost, but a new connection, one forged in crisis and strengthened by trust. He picked up the phone and typed back, "We'll be there." As he set the phone down, Marcus allowed himself a rare moment to simply stand in the quiet, looking out over the city. The glass towers glittered in the sunlight, and somewhere below, the janitor who had replaced him at Heritage Tower would be starting his shift. Somewhere else, a single mother was deciding which bill to pay first, which meal to skip. Marcus knew their lives, knew their choices, because they had once been his own. Now, he was in a position to do something about it. And though the work ahead was daunting, it filled him with something stronger than fear, purpose. The late afternoon sun slanted across Marcus's office, turning the glass walls of the towers outside into sheets of gold. From his window, the city looked calm, almost gentle, but he knew that behind those shining facades countless people were fighting quiet battles, fathers counting bus fares, mothers skipping meals so their children could eat, janitors working through the night with no one to notice. He had been one of them not long ago. He still carried that truth like a scar under his shirt. On his desk, the scholarship proposals lay open, waiting for his notes. Pages filled with numbers, outlines, and projections. But Marcus didn't see numbers, he saw faces. The tired young father at the laundromat, trying to stretch coins into clean uniforms. The single mother who juggled shifts and still managed bedtime stories. The invisible people who held the world together while the world rushed past. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing a hand over his face. The office was quiet, but on the wall behind him, Sarah's photograph and Emma's purple dragon filled the silence with presence. They were reminders of loss, of resilience, of why he could never let himself forget where he came from. His phone buzzed, breaking the stillness. He glanced at the screen and saw Catherine's message again. "Sophie's school play tonight. Emma's invited. Partners' kids stick together." The words warmed him. In Catherine, he had found something unexpected, not just a boss, but a partner in building something that mattered. Their connection had been born in crisis, but over the past months it had deepened into trust. He had seen her not only as a CEO, but as a mother, fragile and fierce at once. And she, in turn, had seen him, truly seen him, in a way few ever had. Marcus typed back quickly, "We'll be there." He could already imagine Emma's delight when he told her. She adored school plays, even if she wasn't the one performing. She would probably insist on wearing her best dress, the one Mrs. Rodriguez had mended twice already, and she'd pepper Sophie with questions until the two girls were laughing like old friends. For a moment, Marcus let himself savor that vision. Emma and Sophie side by side, two children linked by a thread of fate that had begun with a scream in the night. He rose and walked to the window, looking out at the city again. The view no longer made him feel small. It made him feel responsible. He thought about the new programs he and Catherine were planning, the lives they might touch. He thought about the janitor now mopping Heritage Tower's marble floors, about the tired mother riding the late bus, about the countless people whose names no one knew. He whispered to himself, almost like a vow, "We will see them. We will not let them stay invisible." His phone rang this time, not buzzed. Emma's voice burst through the line, high and excited. "Daddy, Mrs. Rodriguez says we're going to a play tonight. Is it true?" Marcus laughed, the sound filling the office. "That's right, sweetheart. Get your nice dress ready. We're going to see Sophie. Is she nice like you?" Emma asked innocently. Marcus felt his chest tighten with love for this small person who believed so fully in him. "I think she's going to be your best friend," he said softly. Her squeal of delight rang through the receiver. "Best friend. Okay, I'll be ready." When the call ended, Marcus lingered at the window. The city spread before him like an open story. He thought of how far he had come, from invisible janitor to a man trusted with shaping opportunities for others. All because he had chosen to stop, to listen, to care. One act of kindness had saved Catherine's life, and that life, in turn, had reshaped his own. He knew the truth now. One person couldn't save the world, but one person could save one life, and that life could ripple outward to save another, and another, until the world grew brighter, piece by piece. Marcus returned to his desk, setting his pen to the proposals once more. Emma's dragon watched from the wall, Sarah's smile steady beside it. The past and the future, side by side. And for the first time in years, Marcus believed the present belonged to him too.